What's up, guys? Welcome to Heresy Financial. My name is Joe Brown, and today we are going to bust some of the myths that I'm seeing everywhere about Bitcoin recently, and just want to go line by line through these four major myths that people are saying about Bitcoin, because when you subject them to a little bit of analysis and scrutiny to the way that money and economics work, and technology and value, it doesn't actually hold water. So we're going to look at four of these myths, and specifically we're going to look at the intrinsic value myth, because we'll dive further into this, but you can clearly see, I don't know if, let me get a little bit closer. As you can clearly see, Bitcoins are made of pure silver, so they do have intrinsic value. No, obviously, I'm just kidding. These are little 1 ounce silver coins with the Bitcoin kind of design stamped on them. I got them from Kitco. These things are a blast. So if you want these, they're linked in the description below. They're usually sold out, so I don't know if they're going to have any right now, but I just thought they looked pretty fun. But seriously, we are going to look at the four biggest myths about Bitcoin here and kind of crush those today here. So ready? Let's dive in. All right, so four myths we're going to look at. We're going to look at the intrinsic value myth. We're going to look at the government banning regulation, killing it myth. We're going to look at the other cryptocurrency myth. And then we're going to look at reliance on other central sources of power, such as internet service providers. We're going to go in reverse order here. Internet service providers. So there are a lot of people that are saying, hey, Bitcoin will be worthless if governments or countries decide to shut the internet down because you can't send it anywhere. So this is not true. You can still use Bitcoin. There are countries right now where it's banned, and this isn't, I'm not addressing the Bitcoin ban myth right now, just the internet usage. You don't actually need the internet. You can have peer-to-peer, like actual device transfers through near field communication, NFC chips on smartphones. You can do that without the internet. You can do physical handoffs with, drives, like the cold storage, the hard drive storage of Bitcoin. You can do physical handoff on that. And so it's just like real money today, right? If the internet went down, all the money in your bank account is completely, worthless, right? You can't access it. You can't log into your account and get it. And so physical cash, or things that you can barter with, are the things that are going to be able to be traded. And Bitcoin falls under that camp. Just because the internet is down doesn't mean you still can't charge your phone and deliver Bitcoin from one device to another if they're close enough. iPhones, Android phones, all smartphones today, they have the technology in them to both receive electronic signals and send electronic signals. That's how you send data over Wi-Fi and your LTE signal, right? And so just because an actual internet hub is shut down, or certain types of traffic on internet service providers is blocked, you don't need the internet to be able to exchange Bitcoin. You can do that in person to person with devices. And if we get to the point where there are countries that are trying to shut down Bitcoin usage through blocking certain transactions like that on the internet, then technology like this will be developed even more and faster and become more widespread. And apps will be developed that can do this, even if it's websites are under the table, or you have to jailbreak a device, or if things get really kind of locked down. You're always going to have the technology is out there already developed. It just needs to be kind of used more to be more widespread. But it's not a capability thing. It's more of just a decision of how to use the technology that we already have. Which brings us to the next point. The next myth about Bitcoin is that government can ban it. And this is kind of one of those that's partially true and partially not true, because when you say governments can crush Bitcoin, that's kind of true when you're saying, let's say the United States decides we're not going to allow any sort of Bitcoin transactions whatsoever. Well, they might be effective. They probably won't be. They might be effective at stopping Bitcoin from being used in the States. But every country that does this creates more of an incentive for other countries to counter that with more freedom, basically. And I made a video going into it's game theory, going into the details of this globally. And this was about a week or two ago that I made this game theory video. You can check out, and I think YouTube tried to slow down the spread of that video, because it's kind of talking about totalitarianism and socialism and communism versus freedom around the world. But if you want more more on the details of kind of how the game theory part of things works out, where if you have a government shutdown of something, you basically cause a capital flight because you create more of an incentive for other countries to be more welcoming to that capital. And that would happen with Bitcoin. Further than that, that's a giant leap to say that the United States or another country could actually be effective in stopping the transactions, because you can make a law against something, but usually when things like this happen, where there's a legal exchange rate put in place or a stoppage of certain sound money throughout history, the only thing that happens is you stop that thing from happening officially, and then you force a black market to happen, right? The war on drugs didn't stop drugs, it forced a black market in drugs. The fact that other things are illegal, let's say prostitution, doesn't mean that actually stopped happening. It just forced it into the underground, right? Same thing with prohibition, right? We outlawed alcohol, speakeasies, and it created an underground, black market alcohol. And so this is the way that things work. When something is valued by a people, a government can stop it happening officially, usually, but that doesn't mean that it actually stops it from happening. Usually it just develops a black market for it. And it's very difficult to stop, something like Bitcoin transactions from happening in a barter sense, where you're not leaving an internet trail or anything like that. Now, the next myth is that, sure, Bitcoin's been doing well, but you don't actually know which cryptocurrency is going to succeed in the long run. And it's all open source, so anybody can make their own cryptocurrency. And so there's really no limit cap to, there's no really cap on this total supply of Bitcoin, because anybody can create their own version. And so this is kind of like saying, hey, there's really no supply on gold because there's other alloys and forms of metal in existence. That's true. There are other metals, but that doesn't mean that they're, exactly the same as gold. And so specifically with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, if you're going to take the open source software, the source code, you're going to take Bitcoin and just make your own. You have to differentiate it somehow, right? And so if you as a person, you want to make Jeff coin, or you want to make Moon coin, and you want to make it your own, if you make it exactly the same in every way, the 21 million cap, the same difficulty adjustment for the miners, the same 4-year halving cycle, everything exactly the same, why would anybody use your coin instead of Bitcoin? They wouldn't, because it's not different. And so if you're going to get the same thing either way, why would you risk your capital on something that is worth 0 versus putting your capital in something that for 10 years the market has spoken and said this has some value? And so if you're going to create a different cryptocurrency, it has to be different in some way. And so you say, okay, well, the main kind of advantage to Bitcoin is kind of its security, right? You would need the majority of the network to approve a change. The security is very tight, and that's, the disadvantage there is the efficiency. But let's say we want to double down on security and make it even more secure and more slow. Well, then again, there's already such a big network effect in place with the amount of capital that is deployed into Bitcoin that if they were going to transition into something more secure, that would make it less efficient. You're sacrificing the efficiency, but since the network isn't as large, you're actually still not as secure. And so just the network size alone makes that the fact that Bitcoin sets such a high threshold for security means that it's near impossible that at least any time soon, and by soon I mean within the next decades, like the next 100 years, it's very, very unlikely that a contender will come along and be, more secure and less efficient than Bitcoin and then be able to replace it in terms of market cap. And that's why every other cryptocurrency, when they differentiate themselves from Bitcoin, they're basically going the opposite way. They're saying, hey, we're going to attack the kind of the disadvantage of Bitcoin, which is that it's slow. We're going to go from the other side and say, hey, we're faster, we're more efficient, we can support more transactions. And that's perfectly fine. You're probably going to have other cryptocurrencies form as kind of secondary layers, like the secondary layers that ultimately are settled in Bitcoin if Bitcoin becomes money, the money of the future. But they're never going to be able to replace or take over the kind of the reserve value or the treasury value, the hard asset value of Bitcoin. They'd be more used as kind of the transaction layer that's ultimately or immediately settled in Bitcoin. All right, now this is the big one: intrinsic value. I touched on it in the last point when we were talking about other cryptocurrencies kind of replacing or taking over Bitcoin's place, but as the leader in cryptocurrencies. But intrinsic value, this is the kicker, and this is what most people who invest in gold, in silver, in hard assets, this is what most people do not like about Bitcoin, because they say it has no intrinsic value. So this is the big one, and I want to before I jump in there, I want to make sure that I'm being clear. None of this is a recommendation for Bitcoin. None of this is a bullish case for Bitcoin. None of this is me even saying this means Bitcoin will go up or down or not. All I'm doing is trying to debunk these myths so that people can make more educated decisions for themselves about what to invest in. And it's just debunking myths. It's not even a bullish case for Bitcoin. So intrinsic value. The main argument against Bitcoin is that it has no intrinsic value. So what we have to do here is we have to define what is intrinsic value, because really, in reality, nothing has intrinsic value. And people say intrinsic value, what they're usually talking about is use value. So when people say there's no intrinsic value, in Bitcoin, other people can say there's no intrinsic value in gold because it's just a brick, it's just a rock, right? And then you'll respond with, okay, but it could be used, in dental work, you can be used in electronics, it's used for jewelry. So there's a use value for it, right? But that's not intrinsic value. It doesn't have value just isolated from humanity, isolated from human action, just, off by itself, let's say, halfway across the universe. There's no intrinsic value in anything by itself. There's only value given to things subjectively through human action. So picture this. Strand yourself on an island in your mind. You're just shipwrecked. You're stranded on an island. And on this island, you find a rock, right? A big rock. Right now, that rock is absolutely useless to you. It has zero value. You look a little bit more and you find a giant gold bar. Right now, that gold bar is useless to you. It has zero value. It has no use value for you right now. You can't do anything with that. You're in survival mode. You look a little bit more and you find a coconut. Now you think, oh, this coconut, this is, I need this coconut because I need food. There's liquid inside this I can drink, right? I'm dehydrated. So right now that coconut is worth a lot to you, but you're trying to smash it open with your hand and you're just not strong enough. It's got a hard shell, hard, case around it, right? So it's a coconut. You can't get inside of it. So there's the potential that it could have use value for you, but right now it still doesn't have any use value for you. Then you go back and you remember, you say, there was a gold bar that I found. So you go back, you find the gold bar and you try and smash it open with the gold bar. Well, the gold is too soft. It can't crack the shell. And I actually don't know the physics of this. You might be able to open a coconut with a gold bar. I'm not sure. But let's just say the gold's too soft. You can't break into the coconut there. At that point, the gold still has zero value to you. The coconut still has zero value to you. Now, it has potential value, but no use value yet. And so then you go one step further, you go back and you find that big rock. Now, all of a sudden, the rock is more valuable to you than the coconut. So you put them together and now you have something that's very valuable to you. You smash open the coconut with the rock, and now that coconut is the only thing that's valuable to you. The rock is now worthless to you because your coconut's open. You eat your coconut, you drink the milk from inside of it, and you're satisfied, right? And so this shows that value, number one, is subjective, and it is reliant on human action, number two. And number three, value cannot be objective because value is set in an ordinal list, not a cardinal list. So an ordinal list would be like, this is the first most valuable thing to me. This is the next most valuable thing to me. This is the next most valuable thing to me, and so on down a list. And so if you're stranded on an island and you find 1 gallon of water and you find, one rock, that value, that bottle of water is going to be, number one on your list, right? And then if you turn the corner and you see an entire shipwreck there with nothing but bottles and gallons of water inside of it, each consecutive bottle of water is going to go further and further down on your value list. At some point, the rock will come into that line, and maybe after 20 bottles of water, that rock is going to be more valuable to you than the next bottle of water because you can use that rock to help you build something, right? So water isn't more objectively valuable than a rock. value is ordinal, not cardinal. There's no cardinal list of value in the universe. It's all subjective to human action. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, we have to say, okay, well then, is it possible that Bitcoin has any use value? Because people say, okay, that's fine. I get the subjective value argument. I get the intrinsic value argument, but Bitcoin has no use value outside of being money, just like fiat. Therefore, it's destined to fail, just like fiat is. Fair point. Let's see. Does Bitcoin have any intrinsic value or any use value outside of being used as money, as a currency? Yes. It's a peer-to-peer decentralized payments system. The technology itself is a network. It is a payments network that's decentralized. And so it does have a use value outside of being a store, like money, like currency. It's a technology that allows people to send each other transactions and not have to rely on a centralized third party or a centralized or trusted third party. That's use value. That's intrinsic value. Now, I'm not saying that means it has objective value, but I'm saying that means that it could be number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or number 100 on somebody's list, subjective value list, because it actually has use value outside of being used as a storehold of wealth, as like a money or savings. The technology itself is a peer-to-peer payment system, and it differentiates itself from the norm, which is a trusted third party or a centralized system, where when you make a transaction with your debit card, it has to go through Visa, and then it has to go through the banks, or has to go through Swift. It's decentralized. Nobody controls it. Doesn't go through a centralized hub. There's no trusted third parties. It's peer-to-peer. So the technology, the network itself, is the use value that it puts forward. And you say, aha, I got you there. Yes, it's a payments network, but it's just a network, meaning it is useless to anybody if they're the only ones to use it. And I got you there because if something has actual intrinsic value, then it needs to be useful for one person, and it can't rely on more than one person using it for it to have value, because then it's a Ponzi scheme. You need more and more people or a lot of people using it for it to have any value. And okay, let's take a step back. Is there anything else in this life that relies on network effects to give itself value that everybody acknowledges has value? How about Facebook? How about Twitter? How about any social media platform? Absolutely worthless if only one person uses it, worth trillions of dollars combined when more than one person is using it. So just because the value in something comes from network effects doesn't mean it has no intrinsic value. It just means that network value is a type of intrinsic value. Just because you need more than one cell phone to be able to, have a telephone network, a cell phone network actually have value, doesn't mean that there's no value in that network. There's clearly value in that network. It's self-evident. And so network value is a type of intrinsic value. Intrinsic value itself doesn't mean objective value, because there's no such thing as objective value. There is only subjective value, and subjective value is dependent on human action. And so that is why the argument that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value is debunked. It's busted. It's a myth. It's false. Again, not a bullish case for Bitcoin, but you can't use it as a bearish case for Bitcoin. So just to recap, internet reliance, Bitcoin's not reliant on the internet. You can have device-to-device transfers with that are dependent or independent of internet usage. Governments can kind of stop it officially. They can't really, they're not effective. Even people in Pakistan right now and other countries, they're using it peer-to-peer without, leaving an internet trail. They're using it for payments and accepting wages in it. So just because a government can stop it officially doesn't mean they can't. That doesn't mean that a black market won't emerge for it if people want to. And ultimately, it creates a game theory dynamic where it forces capital flight out of that country into the places that are more accepting and welcoming of freedom and wealth and capital. Third, the myth that Bitcoin's going to fail because other cryptocurrencies are better or will win doesn't hold water, because the way that you differentiate yourself with another cryptocurrency means that really the only use case for other cryptocurrencies might be additional layers on top of Bitcoin as the final or ultimate settlement layer. And then finally, you can't say that Bitcoin doesn't have intrinsic value, because we've clearly seen now that intrinsic value defined as objective value is a myth. There's no such thing as objective value. Value is only subjective value in an ordinal list, not a cardinal list. Value is subjective. It relies on a use case and use value for any particular other person at any given time for any situation based on personal preference as well. And the fact that there is use value then contained in the technology, in the network that is Bitcoin, means that there is some use value built into that technology. And network value is a type of intrinsic value there. So those are the 4 myths that I want to cover. Blow them open. They're busted. They're incorrect. They're infactual. They don't stand up to the scrutiny. If you're still looking for a place to start buying your Bitcoin, or if you've been doing it through like Robinhood or PayPal and you don't like the fact that you can't actually transfer it to your own private wallet, you want to switch up, I've got all of my recommended resources who I use to stack sats. I use Swan Bitcoin to stack sats. I use I Trust Capital for the Bitcoin that I hold underneath the umbrella of retirement account. That means that any gains, since it's in an IRA, aren't going to be taxable, which could be a big way that government tries to kind of clamp down on some of the gains and try and persuade people to not use it. You're not subject to that if you have it in the IRA there, because it's a retirement account. So self-directed retirement account through I Trust Capital is who I use to hold my Bitcoin that is underneath the umbrella of IRA. I've got them linked in the description below. As always, I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day.